Are you ready to dive deeper? Over the course of the next couple of hours, I want to show you more about how cascading style sheets combine with XHTML to create a variety of page designs. So you can create pages that look like this, or even like this. Now, I have to warn you that I would never suggest you create a website quite like this one. I created this site specifically for this course, and I created a whole bunch of different page designs so that I could show you how to create a whole bunch of different page designs. But I would never suggest you create a website where the navigation is sometimes here on the left and sometimes up here across the top. I did this because I assume you don't want to learn to create one page layout. You want to learn to create your page layout. So in the course of this series, you'll see a number of different ways that you can style a list of links to create navigation elements that are in different parts of the page and that look differently in different places. Here, I'm using a background color and I'm using the border option to add a line above and below my navigation bar. There are a lot of cool ways to use different aspects of CSS rules to create very different page designs. I'll also show you in the course of this series how to create a page completely from scratch so that this design we create in the longest lesson in this series, starting from a blank page, adding a series of div tags to the page in Dreamweaver, and I'll show you some tricks about how to get those div tags just where you want them by using split view. I'll also show you how you can do things like use a background image and the specific positioning options made possible by CSS to create a layout that gives at least the illusion of a layered effect. Along the way, I'll point out a few other things in the evolution of CSS, like why we don't use tables anymore for page layout. Tables create rather limited design options, and although creative designers in the past figured out how to merge and split cells to create a variety of page designs with the table tag, that's no longer recommended. But it doesn't mean you can't use tables anywhere in your site. It just means you should restrict your use of tables to tabular data. When you really have a series of rows and columns of information, tables are a great way to format that data. And CSS is the best way to style that table. So I'll show you in another lesson how to combine CSS with tables to change the color of everything from the borders to the text and beyond. Finally, I'll get into some of the more advanced aspects of CSS, like how you control the spacing between lines of text, and why there are so many different ways to set the size in CSS. I'll also show you how you can quickly and easily use the CSS layouts included in Dreamweaver CS5 to create a page like this one in a matter of minutes, and why it's a great technique to start with those wonderful CSS layouts that come with Dreamweaver, and you can then tailor them to any design you might want. I'll point out some of the differences between the CSS layouts included in Dreamweaver CS5 and previous versions of Dreamweaver. If you've used CS4 or CS3, you can learn a lot just by noting how the CS5 layouts are different than previous versions. That doesn't mean you can't use the layouts from previous versions. It just means there's more to learn with this new version of Dreamweaver. And one of the cool things that you'll learn is that there's some new features in Dreamweaver that can help you with CSS. One of them is Adobe Browser Lab. And before we even get into things more advanced, I want to point out how important it is that as you're creating new layouts in Dreamweaver, you test your work regularly in browsers. Dreamweaver does a pretty good job of displaying a web page the way it will look in most modern web browsers. That is, the latest versions of Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari all follow standards pretty well and display pages pretty close to Dreamweaver. There are some exceptions, and there are some times when Dreamweaver may mislead you. But one of the coolest features in Dreamweaver CS5 is the integration with Adobe Browser Lab, which means you can open any page even before you've uploaded it to the web and preview it online using Browser Lab. You'll also find this option under the Preview drop-down list here in the middle of the program when you choose Adobe Browser Lab. What this does is to take a screenshot of whatever page you have open in Dreamweaver and display it for you so that you can see how that page would look in a number of different web browsers. In this case, I'm looking at it in Firefox 3.6 on Windows. But if I use this drop-down list, you'll see there are many other browsers I can choose from, including the rather notorious Internet Explorer 6.0. Now, IE6 was notorious because it did not follow standards when it comes to the way CSS was displayed, particularly in terms of padding and spacing between elements. So if you just look at it here, it may look about the same. But if I use the options here in Browser Lab, I can look at the 2-up view and see I've just taken a screenshot with Firefox 3.6, and now I can compare that to Internet Explorer 6.0. Now I'll tell you, some page designs will look very different from one browser to another. I've worked pretty hard in this layout in this course that all of the pages within this website that you'll be seeing will look pretty consistent from one browser to another. But there are some exceptions. If you use the onion skin option, you'll see right away that there are differences between IE6 and Firefox 3.6. And you can see the offset here in what looks like blurred images. That's laying one screenshot on top of another so that you can better appreciate those differences. Now, you can make yourself crazy trying to make your pages look exactly the same in every browser. And if you don't have the budget to justify that, I suggest that you settle for your pages looking good enough in enough web browsers. But make sure that you test your pages regularly, and make sure that you test for things like the variation of Internet Explorer 6.0 to make sure there aren't radical differences or problems that might make your pages unreadable. That you want to avoid. For the most part, as you progress through learning CSS, you'll find that as long as you create clean XHTML code, follow standards with your CSS, and test your pages to make sure you haven't done something that really falls apart in different browsers, you'll find that even as you go to the next level in CSS, it's not as hard as you might imagine. So take a deep breath, get ready to go deeper, and I assure you, the beauty of what you can create with your own designs will make it all worthwhile.